Welcome to Masters of Data, everyone. I'm Adam White. I have with me Zoe Hawkins and David Gervin. Hello, friends. Good to see you
Hi.
again.
Can't get rid of
Hello.
us.
Wouldn't even want to. Today, we are talking about the data layer as a key to AI success. Like, what does that mean?
Well, I think
What
the
it,
first thing you have to do though is when you say data layer, you have to go data layer.
data layer? Did I
Data
do
layer.
that? Because I
No,
do talk with my
I think
hands a
it's
lot.
mandatory. I think we
Okay.
have to do
I
Yeah.
agree, because it's supposed to be like a cake, right? And you
yeah,
have the data
the
layer, and then
data
you
layer.
have AI on is AI the sprinkles? I'm not too sure, but it's something.
I don't know.
You can't just have sprinkles. You need the data
The
layer.
AI
data
may be
layer.
the bourbon mixed in. Is
Oh.
like rum cakes.
I was
It's
about to
not
Because
say,
it
is that
goes
how you make a
throughout.
cake, David?
I
Yeah.
I've never eaten
Clearly a
cake.
baker.
Right.
I've never had cake in my life.
So, from a data layer perspective, like we talk all the time about the data layer and the importance of the strength of, one's data, especially as it relates to AI, because, kind of the garbage in, garbage out, principle. But also there are a lot of lakes, if we look at data lakes, data lake houses, data septic tanks, as David likes to say, like what happens when you start spreading your data across so many different places? Like, what does that do to AI? What does that do to generally your effectiveness from a data perspective? It's an
Yeah.
interesting discussion.
I think the first thing that jumps out to me is latency. AI is already
Yeah.
kind of slow, even though it's not. We were just talking about this, about how already gotten so used to it. When we see the AI thinking, we start getting mad. And it's doing things at such a fast speed, like we could never comprehend that. So I think latency is one thing. And the other is, the data normalization. You're going to
Yep.
have data in four different places with different schemas and different indexing and different blah blah blahs. And now you have to do everything on the fly and then ship data from one place to another. And so you just start building latency and getting data drops and
Yeah.
everything's, yeah, it's kind of
Those
Yeah.
expectations, like it reminds me, it probably less so these days, but back in the day when you would go from like 3G to 4G, on your phone, and if you went somewhere that only had 3G, it's like we might as well be shipping stone tablets back and forth,
yeah,
like it's, your expectation of speed and like what quality service is changes so fast. It's that way with AI a little bit, but to your point, like look at all of the things that it's doing in the background and how long that would take, a
Well,
person to
and
do.
And bringing us back to like, I remember, I think on a previous episode, we talked about how AI is kind of like the way the internet was when the internet was new. And like, you would go to a web page and it would spin or it would take a while to load. And you'd be like, what's wrong with this? I mean, I still do that, but like our expectations were very, like, went up so fast of like, you'd send an email and you'd expect the person to have it instantly. And maybe it would take 2 seconds. Like I do it now and it's like, we've sent you a code. And I'm like, OCD refreshing my screen, like, where is it? 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 Like our standards are so high for, speed and accuracy and just make it happen right away, instant gratification. And I think AI is that sort of sometimes, but when it's, when we say like, oh, this turns 2 hours of work into 15 minutes, like, I don't want to look at a interface for 15 minutes. Like, that feels endless. Then I think, this is taking way too long, even if it is actually, whatever, 8 times faster than if I did it without
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's funny how fast we get like accustomed to things and we're just like, what the hell? Like just throw the
Yeah.
laptop across the
So
room.
impatient.
Like this is taking 37 seconds. Like I'm gonna lose it. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a weird part of the human condition, I think.
it
Yeah.
is. And, I have been in this industry long enough to have heard the term like federated search for ages, right? So like, this idea that you have this data in a bazillion different places and you need to be able to find stuff across all of it. And that conversation has pretty much died with AI. Like now we're just like, oh, your AI minion will just be the Federation, be the bot that can go from place to place and
Like the
find what you're
bridge
looking.
between all of these things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a scary thing for like at one point because you're like, oh, are we gonna have to build federated search to compete with things? And then MCP is like, you don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's a crazy technology change. Like when MCP protocol first came out, I think I read it maybe on like its second week or something. And I remember sitting in a call in here and someone was talking about federated search, and I was like, have you heard about MCP? And they're like, what is that? And I was like, I think this is going to end federated search to a certain degree. I think agents are going to do this. And everybody looked at me like I was psychotic at the time because it was so early. But look, like I work from an IDE and it touches 15 different things, like that's how it is now.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I do still think like no matter how, and maybe this is going to start feeling like Star Wars, maybe Star Trek, the Fed, no matter how big the Federation is, um,
The Empire?
the Empire Federation, I don't know, but no matter how many data lakes or how many things the AI has to touch, like you still need to give it access to those
Yep.
lakes, lake houses,
Yeah.
warehouses, wherever you've put your data. You need to be comfortable with letting the AI in there, which may or may not be the case depending on how sensitive that data is, or depending on, what you want to give the AI access to, or maybe you give one AI this access and then the MCP means that the AIs talk to each other, whatever that looks like. I think, we keep talking about the data layer of this
Yeah.
cake as if it is a singular cake layer, but it really is much more of like a composite of all of these different data lakes and warehouses and storage and what you choose to already put into this one versus that one. So I think
Yeah.
that it's not a monolith of data layer. It is
Yeah.
definitely something different.
I
Yeah.
think there's something with that though, and like obviously at Sumo, we think you should keep majority of your data here because we built a context layer for AI and that kind of stuff to be a shill. Sorry, people out there. But there's an interesting argument to have right now, which is like always there's going to be third party stuff, right? Like this is how we work. We have tons of apps and integrations. There's going to be other things. The funny thing though is now that everybody's using MCP and agents, and that's kind of going forward. And this has just been my rant lately on LinkedIn and across security conferences. I don't know what's going on with the product teams out there, but you can't use just-in-time credentials to fix agents. And this has been my huge thing because sessions don't make that possible. And I have a lot of research to show it. But until the industry kind of figures their crap out and stops building things that don't work, like people should be careful about where they're keeping their sensitive data and how they're letting agents, go after that. Because I hate to say it out loud, but a lot of the head product guys at big companies, I don't think have ever worked with agents because of the way they're building and like their solutions were how we secured humans. And we're
I
in a
mean,
very
how
different space.
how how could they have to a degree? That is an interesting thing, like in the AI kind of expertise space, is
Yeah.
like we none of us have had very much time to become an AI expert at this point.
Yeah.
But you're right, like we're treating AI like it's people, and it's almost like more of a non-human identity, problem, quote unquote, than a human identity problem, which absolutely exists, but
Yeah.
it's on an even greater scale.
Yeah, and I think the line was drawn, and like you said, like not that many people could have had that much experience, right? The line was drawn in your background. So I'm a hacker, so I know how to break things. I'll never be the best builder. But I see the gaps because my brain's wired backwards. So I think most product guys are builders. So they didn't see the gaps. They thought, hey, we use IAM and just in time for this like, privilege access management. It's going to work with agents, right? They didn't think of, poisoning, session stealing, confused deputy attacks, elongated session hallucination, context fraud, all those kind of things. And it's just a very weird space to be in right now with that. So I think we're gonna see like this year is going to be the year of popping products. Like all the security researchers are going to come out and just smoke everybody at Black Hat, I think. But
They're
but
just waiting.
it's a good time to think, well, maybe we should keep our stuff somewhere that we've been keeping it instead of like jumping feet first into like I think you should be able to jump into AI to a certain degree and trust, but maybe keep your data a little safer because like the reality is that still is the important thing, right?
And part of
But
what we're talking about here, Tim, sorry, Zoe,
no, go ahead.
is just like, and I'm not necessarily advocating one data lake, nor am I advocating, 20, but it does feel like, just like everything else, there's increased exposure as you increase the sources, that agents are crawling across. So,
Totally.
um,
Attack surface creep all
yeah,
day.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's the same old stuff.
And at the same time, the insights that the AI can derive are only as good as the data it has access to. So you really end up in this weird balancing act where you're like, okay, don't give it my best data, my most private data, but you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and I think we do the same thing with human beings, right? Like, I know, David, you're saying don't think of them as humans, but like, there is that piece of like, if you have a junior employee, you're going to make sure they don't have access to everything, right? Like, you're going to slowly ramp them up in terms of what they have access to and make sure that you have a certain level of trust before give them the keys to things that they could potentially break or ruin. But they
Well,
can still learn and grow and build on what they have access to at the start.
yeah, I know, no, but I just want to correct one thing real quick. It's super
Yes.
important. We should think of them as humans sometimes, but think of them as like college interns on drugs.
Mm,
Yeah. So that's
great.
super technical thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but I do think this is the nuance that we get into with the data layer,
Yeah.
which is weirdly fun to say over and over again on this podcast, just by the
Data
way.
layer.
Data layer. I don't know, it's like an odd mouth feel. But we think about even if you give AI specific information. We know it can hallucinate, right? Like that's the other
Yeah.
piece of this is that, I'll give the AI or I'll have the AI working on a specific data set and it will come back with an answer to me. And I'm like, that doesn't look right. Can you double check that? Can I double check that? Like, let's go confirm that. And then it will recheck, and be like, oh, sorry, I hallucinated. I've had it tell me that, or it will stay super confident that it's right and then continue to give me incorrect results. And then I show it like, no, this is the correct result. And it's like, oh, you're right. So I feel like
Yeah.
there is that piece as well of even not your most sensitive data, even not like the stuff you're really nervous about, it can still get it wrong. So it's like only as good as the data you give it. And even then, expect that you will need to be in the loop. Like you don't get to just put this on autopilot. You
Right.
have to double check and confirm and be the tastemaker to say like, ooh, that has the right look and feel to it. That's what I'm going for. That's an expected outcome
Yeah.
versus whatever, random thing the AI might decide to pop out with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the things I really liked working with the V2 of Mobot a lot was the white box audit trail is what I've been like calling. I don't know what we're supposed to call it. I'm so bad at that. Sorry.
Like the explanation of like what it's doing, right?
It's got to earn your trust, right? And like
Right.
it's all AI is going to make mistakes. Just it's probabilistic. So I think we're in a spot where if you can go through and kind of look at its work, or you see it taking the same path, like let's just say an investigation, right? You know how you would normally do an investigation. You're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have hypothesis, I have my insight, now I'm gonna do some queries, and you see it doing the same kind of stuff you would do. You're like, oh, okay. It like builds trust. Like, and you'll be able to like look through it. And if something seems off, you can look back. I think the black box AI stuff that's coming out so heavily, that's the stuff that to me from like a practitioner level is sketchy. Because I don't know if I can trust it or not. I need to see some sort of proof, like whenever we're doing these kind of big deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that for myself. Like I do it obviously not in an incident, but I'll watch what Gemini or Claude says they're doing and I'll interrupt them if I think it's wrong. Like
Yeah.
I'll be like, whoa, 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 that's not the path I was trying to send you down. Like this is the path. And so I think to your point, like you need to see where it's going. Because if it just is like, I made it to the destination and you're like, that's not where I sent you, like that's not the right place, then it's really hard to know where you went wrong or what it did. Whereas if you can watch that if you have that visibility to be like, oh, you access this data lake and not that data lake, like, okay, cool. Like you went to the right source, you got the right information. I'm going to trust the output more than if it's just like, I found a log and you're like, I don't think that's the right one. Like,
I actually wish you could interject more easily into its thread. Like if it's working on something, be like, "Oh, I remember that I missed or that I didn't tell you, this thing that you really need in order to like get the best." Like I know you can hit pause and stuff, but it's kind of like almost, when I just think about like a Walmart delivery or something, like there's always a window where it's like if you need to add something, here's the window. Like that concept with AI would be kind of nice. So you can just again make sure that it gets the best result. But um
especially if it's going to think for 15 minutes. Like, I think
exactly,
that's the
yeah.
other piece. Like, you
Up
can
to
hit pause and you're already 5 minutes into its process,
Yeah.
and then
yeah,
it's paused, it stops. And if you pick it back up again, it's going to start over from the beginning.
right.
Whereas, like, I agree, having that kind of like, hey, I'm thinking this, almost like a check-in point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I have seen with some AI. Like some AI, I'll be like, hey, go make me this. And it'll be like, just to confirm, do you want this or this or this? And I'm like, oh, great questions. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
refine this a little bit.
I've started asking if it understands what I'm trying to get out of it first.
Oh,
Like
smart.
like here's the thing. Like, do you have any questions for me? Do you understand what? And it'll spit it out, and then I kind of know if it's going to take a little while, if it's at least on the right track for that. Like,
I threaten it with other AIs. So I tell it like at the end, I'm like, just so you know, Claude, Codex and Grok is going to double check your work. Maybe it
different
seems
approaches.
I'm all about threatening. But
Yeah,
some of the developer tools like Cursor and stuff, you can like write out your next prompt and actually interject it while it's working, as
yeah,
opposed
that's
to like
nice.
fully stopping it. So I think like they're seeing the need for that kind of stuff. It's just since we're all using these like, big lab companies that are building it, it's almost like we can only have the wrapper layer. We don't get the say on how the model actually interacts with you as much. So
Yeah. There's a lot of talk in the market. I think this is a really interesting thing where, it's like, will we, what's going to happen with junior developers or, new law students or, whatever the case may be. And it just brings up the question of like when you get an output from AI, like you have to have a certain level of sophistication to even know if it was correct or not, or if you need to adjust things or that's an interesting element as well that's like super human in the loop because if we all just start as a society taking AI's original output as fact, then I think society's going to crumble pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Like
but
stuff
that will
will
not,
stop,
that's not the good place.
things will
Yeah.
stop working, very fast if that's what happens. But it is just interesting from a workforce perspective on like what's required actually not to ask AI to do something, but to know if it's behaving, like it should or
yeah.
optimally, or if you're getting the right output from it.
Yeah, it's hard because it kind of takes away that junior position to a certain degree, but that junior position needs to be there because there has to be that human oversight. So you have to
Yeah.
mature up to be able to be that level. Like I think of like when I'm developing and building with AI, I'm like a manager, right? Like, and I can just from being in AppSec for so long, I can spot things that are wrong, even if I don't completely know the code or the technicality, but I can be like, this doesn't seem right because I know the architecture. But how do you get to that place if you don't have 10 years of working through it? And like the other like part of that is now we're gonna have kids coming up who've grown up with AI. So we had that with cell phones, I was pre-cell phone and like they're gonna be better using AI than we ever will be, I think, in 10 years. But at the same time, they won't have maybe the critical thinking foundation that we had to have growing up without it. So it's like, man, it's like a pretty tricky
Yeah, I
space.
mean, I think I think I remember reading an article and it made me laugh so hard because it was a response to the outcry about kids who learn to type versus ha having good handwriting and
Mm.
like kids not learning cursive anymore. It was some article that was like addressing this reaction and saying like I don't know how to write on a chalkboard. And like there was literally an article from like I don't know, 100 years ago where they were like, kids today aren't learning to write on blackboards, and what's going to happen when they need to write on a blackboard? And it's like, nothing, because I'm not using chalk anymore. Thanks.
Right. Yeah.
But I do agree that like there is that element of what is the junior employee? How are they gaining that experience? How are they gaining that taste and that tribal knowledge and all of those words we use for like knowing what good looks like?
Yeah.
And also there's the element as well that I think now we're going to start seeing kind of a reaction to or a backlash from of, you know, we have these junior employees and they are, traditionally like the bottom of the totem pole, right? They're paid the least in an organization. They're your cheapest people in your product org or your security org or whatever the case may be. Um, and if they're using AI, depending on how expensive that AI is, like you have to do the efficiency math of like, is it better for that person to spend whatever the token amount is to do 20% of their job? Are we still coming out ahead from a cost and efficiency perspective?
Yeah.
Or is it actually good for them to just spend 2 hours doing the work that, yeah, the AI could have done it in 15 minutes, but you know what? It's actually cheaper for us to just have,
Yeah.
the new college grad spend 2 hours on a Tuesday learning how to do this and doing it themselves and doing it manually. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a hybrid approach there. And like if I was still running AppSec teams right now, my juniors, I would still make them do OSCP. I'd still make them do manual pen testing. They're not allowed to hook up Claude to Kali Linux. They have to go in there and use Burp Suite. And I'd make them do that stuff because I was just thinking about like literally just now, I still do that with my kids. My kids are writing cursive. My kids have to print. They don't get to use their tablet until they've like the digital part of their learning until they've finished all the manual part. So I think there's gotta be both still until we're to the point like I mean really AI is like 72% accurate at its best right now. Like that's not accurate. So until that is 99 or more accurate than most humans, like I don't
Yeah.
know if we can skip that phase.
well, going back to kids, I mean, like if my kid comes home with a 72 on a test, am I having a conversation about that? Like, are we, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
when the
Yeah.
AI comes back and is 72% accurate, people are like, oh, that's pretty good. But like if I see my kid getting a 72%, I'm like, oh, what didn't you understand? Like, do we
Yeah.
need to support you more in this, so that you can get the better grade or whatever the case may be?
Which
But
is
like
almost
set
a failing grade in a lot of schools, by the
in some
way.
schools,
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, I think that's just it is like the standard, going back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, yes, the AI is faster than we could imagine. Yes, it's doing incredible things. But then you look at the accuracy or you look at, what data it's touching or whatever, and you're like, okay, like kind of
Yeah.
level set for expectations of what you're comfortable giving it at this point versus maybe what you want a grown up to look at.
Yeah.
I saw a big AI company, security company that's trying to do defense at scale. And I was like reading their little white paper, and they were so proud that they had like it was an 89 or 91% accuracy rate. And they're like a blocker. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
1 out of 10 you're letting attacks through. 1 out of 10, you're wrong. Like from like my background, that is unacceptable. So we're just not there yet. I think we have all these great ways to use it, but people jump the gun on the models. And we always have to remember too that those are wrappers on models, right? So people are like taking the intelligence that Anthropic or OpenAI or whatever is building, and then they're trying to make a product with the wrapper on top. Like that's why there needs to be a real foundation. And I think like not to shill too hard on this podcast, but that ties it back to kind of our thought processes. We have a really good foundation, and we're making that foundation work with whatever models are coming out.
What's as you've just done, David, kind of taking it back to the title of the episode a bit, like data layer is the key to AI success. What's the interplay between the accuracy of the data layer, like how good the data is that AI has to work with, and the model and how it works with the data. Like what's the interplay there of like the
Yeah.
accuracy figure that you end up with?
So there's going to be like twofold. There's going to be accuracy and burn too.
Yeah,
So like if you think of our data layer as like our all of our prompt stuff, like our proprietary knowledge for our agents in Sumo, and you also think of it as our data pipeline coming in, right? So we're normalizing and maturing data is a good way so the AI can rip through it easier. We have
yeah,
a better architecture internally, but then also we build all the stuff that so like SOC analyst agent knows what triage is. It understands what it's supposed to check, what it's supposed to look at, and that's how we do for each agent. So if you think of it like we have this foundation and we're building the skills for those agents and their path to work, the better a job we do, the more we make up for what the model can't handle. And no one can afford to run Opus 4.7 for this kind of stuff. It would be $1 million a day type of thing. So
yeah,
all the companies that were using this kind of stuff, we're gonna have to use not bad models, but the more affordable models. So we have to make sure that we have the deterministic side set up to where they're not burning tokens, making stupid decisions. If it has
yeah.
a path forward, it doesn't cost as much to run and it can be more accurate. So those
Right.
guardrails on like the workflows are really important.
Yeah. It's been super interesting thus far with AI. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. We maybe we've been allowed to get drunk on just kind of AI usage, run amok, do whatever you want, create stupid pictures, memes. I'm as guilty of it as anyone, but it's like there are actual costs to these things and companies that need to be profitable in doing this. And so just to your point of like the model that's chosen, the efficiency at which it kind of handles the data and the outputs that you get. Like it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out in the next couple of years. It's like this promise of AI, okay, great, but like there is an actual cost to this stuff, and like how that plays out is going to be fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some maybe some gut checks here in the future as those big data center costs have to get hit by boards at some point, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's
people will
it,
be writing their own emails again in the future.
Maybe.
Potentially, maybe people will be like, this is probably more cost
I
effective to
just
do
hope
it
they
myself.
start writing their own LinkedIn posts again because you're my enemy if you're the one that just responds to me on LinkedIn with AI. I hate it with a passion.
AI slop.
We are not
Yeah.
friends.
But it is kind of, as we've talked about, a couple of times here too, like the smaller, kind of more niche, like examples of AI that are a little more focused on tasks, like those are super compelling, easier to control, token burn, those kinds of things. Like it's, I don't know, my mind just kind of always wraps back to that a little bit as like, you know, there's all this kind of big AI stuff, and then there's the smaller things that people maybe use for their day jobs that are more practical and kind of easier to get your head around the value of.
Yeah. Got to get the basics right first, right?
Yeah.
Just everything.
Yep. Well, this has been really fun, y'all. Thanks for the discussion again, Zoe and David. Always great to chat with you, and thank you all for listening. And we'll see you all on the next episode of Masters of Data. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.